All right, so there are a few little keys. We've got to get the jurors to open up. And how do we do that? Oh, we're going to talk about that in just a second. We've got to get jurors to talk. And what do we want them to talk about? You know what I've seen a dear friend of mine, summa cum laude from Harvard Law School, you know what he gets them to talk about? I say, you're from Vermont. You're from Vermont originally? Is that right, Vermont? Ever do any fishing? The fishing voir dire. I had no idea it was a fishing case. Turns out it was a bullshit voir dire case. I think sometimes we get nervous and we want to talk about nonsense. Now, there is something about rapport building. And we do want to listen to the jurors and we want to follow up. And if they tell us they're a fisher person, we want to go, oh, that's wonderful. I bet you really enjoy that. We want to listen. We want to suck up whenever we can. But we don't want to waste all of our time because if your judges are like mine, they got the whip out. And they're ready to ride it hard to get through voir dire. And so they don't want us piddling around on bullshit. And so if I'm going to go off on voir dire, then by the time I get warmed up and get to real issues in my case, they've had it. And they're cutting past me. So we've got to get to real stuff. You know the other thing, have you guys heard about this notion of what is it in the courtroom? Credibility in the courtroom. Y'all ever heard of this? I used to think it was garbage. I really did. I was a young lawyer, ponytail, fighting like mad all the time and winning cases. It's because I came here and I listened to McCarthy, and for the most part, and it was wonderful, and I was learning storytelling, and I thought, fuck that credibility, that's for the old fat law firm guys. I'm a storyteller for justice. Ooh, we win cases. What I didn't realize is by telling winning stories, I was earning credibility. Well, I think one of the things we can do in voir dire by talking about real stuff and going to it and not apologizing for it, we earn a lot of credibility because we're active listening. You know, we don't do that a lot in this world. Oprah does it every day. She got millions of viewers. We never do it. And so by really kind of dialing in and listening to jurors and making them talk about real things, we earn a tremendous amount of credibility. And then what else happens? When they start talking about real stuff, then we know what our case is. They don't. When we start talking about real stuff, we can start figuring out, all right, on what side of Mount Everest are they? Are they on Hitler's side? Or are they on the side of Justice, Gandhi, Adams, and Dr. King? You know, where are they? Which side of the great precipice are they going to fall on? And jurors will self-identify if you force them to talk. But they don't want to talk. Most of our jurors aren't going to therapy. And they're not coming to jury selection to gauge a new sort of worldview from you. So we've got to force them in some way to open up with us. How do you do that? Oh, we're about to learn. Hopefully. Oh, we'll go back one more. The other thing we're going to talk about very briefly at the end is locking down for cause. For you non-voir dire people, that is when you have an impaired juror. We got to get that impairment sort of conceptually into deliberations. We got to make sure the judge gets that juror is going to be impaired regardless of what I tell them. They're going to have that impairment with them, and I got to strike them pre-trial because it would be reversible error. That seems to be the only thing that moves our guys. But the impairment, the sort of well, I don't like the burden of proof kind of stuff doesn't matter if they can honestly set it aside and follow the law. Or I would require, if it were up to me, I'd require all defendants to testify. But, when the judge tells them, well, that's not what's required here. If I instruct you, you can't hold that against them. Could you honestly not hold it against them? And if the juror honestly says, yeah, no problem, then they're qualified. If they say, I'd try, but it'd be really hard, I don't know, at the end of the case, I'd still have some questions, then they're not qualified, okay? So we got to try to lock them down whenever we get that little cause impairment because we know, 52% of the people voted for Bush? We know there are a lot of terrible people in this country. The more of them we can get on the old train and just get them out of town, the better off our 12 in the box will be. We got to, whenever we got the opportunity, kill the bad ones. Load them up, send them off. It'll be good. And we'll talk about how to do that in a minute. we're ahead of the game. This is what I made fun of at the beginning. This is traditional voir dire as it is conducted in Voir dire America. It's nonsense. This game is this fiction. I honestly believe, and this is through a lot of experience in dealing with capital jurors, I know in my heart, I'm telling you, when you talk to people about real things, including something that we progressive white people never, ever, ever want to talk about, racism. I mean, we just can't talk about race. Bill Clinton can't talk about racism. It's just a no-win for the progressive white guy. Progressive white guy. But when forced to talk honestly about stuff, when you really listen, when you really put it on people, they'll tell you. And you got to believe them because they're telling you that they're going to tell you the truth. I don't think they're going to lie to you. When you ask them for bullshit, guess what? They will give you bullshit. And so I think the real art of voir dire is not falling into the bullshit trap. And by the way, if anyone is offended by profanity, Mr. McCarthy raised his hand. If anyone is, I apologize, but it just feels safe to be a potty mouth. Right, Bennett?
Absolutely, Mr. Adams.
Oh, can you guys read that, or is it too far away? You gotta love stealing things without any attribution to the New Yorker. This is an elephant on the shrink couch saying, nobody ever talks about me. You know, the elephant in the room. We've got to go to the real stuff. Do you think there's race in our cases in the criminal justice system? You think? Are you guys scared to death to talk about it? People of color, people of, hard to be, of less color than this. People of no color, do any of you engage jurors in a talk of race? You do? A few people?
I think it's hard to get honest answers.
You're damn right it is. It's incredibly, that may be the hardest area of all to voir dire on. How do we do it? If it's the hardest area in the world to voir dire on, well, let's start there. All right, how do we do it? Well, I've seen it done a lot of ways bad. You want to see Adam's first attempt at voir dire on race? Oh, I'm going to be held in contempt. How much money do I have in my pocket? All right, let me look at my notes real good. Have you ever used the N-word? Do you know anybody who has? When was the last time you heard the N-word? What does the N-word mean? What does it mean to you? Does your family used in your household growing up? Anybody here, would anybody raise their hand who uses the N-word? And shockingly, a couple of hands went up. I'm not joking about that. A couple of people's hands went up because sometimes I don't think she was lying. I think the racist juror said, hey, I know this guy's onto something. He's going to get me out of jury selection. This appears it's going to go for a while. I'm going to go ahead and exit stage left now. So they stayed and they came up and said, turns out, Judge, I'm racist. I said, God, may I have that transcript, please, from your presentation? It's awful to talk about racism. There are two wonderful faculty members from this college, Jeff Robinson and Jody English, who spent a lot of time working on a presentation, a day-long thing on voir diring about race. And they both have told me it was the most difficult thing they've ever done. And that they felt awkward the whole time. Now, Jeff's an African-American guy. Jody's an Anglo-y gal. And, and they really spent a lot of time working on it. And they really they were happy that they did it because they were sort of trying to go somewhere that was kind of uncharted. But they weren't thrilled with how it went. I mean, it's tough. So my thought that I'm going to throw out at my next trial is something a little different. Now, one of the things they came up with that I liked was, do you think my client has any reason to be scared with all you white people here? And they said it a little differently. They said, well, let's think about this in another context. If you were on a tour bus trip with your church group, you went up to New York, went and toured some churches, found yourself in Harlem, got accused of taking somebody's purse, arrested, went to court. You're appointed an African-American lawyer. There's an African-American prosecutor, African-American judge, African-American jury panel, all African-American guards. You're the only white person anywhere around. Would you kind of be a little concerned that maybe you couldn't get a fair day in court? Why would you have that concern? Is that a legitimate concern? Blah, blah, blah. Well, let's talk about, And I sort of thought, I kind of like that. I'm going to try that. The other thing I thought is maybe we'd just do something, ma'am, put you on the spot here. And I'm not going to apologize for it because you understand this is an important case. James is facing a rape charge, and obviously he's an African-American man, and the accuser's a white woman. I want to talk to you about race. Have you ever heard the term playing the race card? Have you?
Yes.
What do you think people mean when they say that? We'll get to you in a second. Thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing. God, do I love you. But ma'am, what do you think? What do you think people mean when they talk about playing the race card?
Trying to garner sympathy.
Who is trying to garner sympathy?
A minority person in the situation.
All right. Have other people heard that phrase?
Yes.
And is it do you remember when you first heard that phrase?
OJ.
Oh, really? Judge, I didn't mention it. They I did not bring up the old taboo OJ thing. That was brought up by the juror, but I think now it's important to follow up. Ma'am, when you raised your hand, and I see that you're from the Virgin Islands, and we would love to come do a seminar presentation for you at some point in time, all 100 of us. It would be wonderful. And you've also heard the term playing the race card.
Sure.
And what does that mean to you?
Well, for me, it means anyone who's in my particular court system at the time trying to garner sympathy because of their color, whether it's white, black, or whatever. Because in my court system, most of the jurors are black. Almost everyone in there is black.
So in some way, it is whoever is talking about it
Yes.
is trying to manipulate the system for an advantage.
Correct.
Does anybody here believe or have heard that this notion of playing a race card isn't even fair? Because race is a legitimate issue to discuss in society, and by labeling it this way, it somehow makes it illegitimate. Anybody?
Are you asking, do we agree with that statement?
No, has anybody heard that argument? That by just calling something the race card kind of makes it sound manipulative, when there's nothing at all wrong about talking about race, because racism exists still in 2010 in Macon, Georgia. Some people think. Has anybody heard that?
Calling anything a card,
A card, yeah.
I mean, that has a negative inference to it from the get-go. So, I mean,
Yeah. So I don't really know how to go much beyond that. Now I'm getting scared again, and I'm going to get my legal pad and run back to PowerPoint. But I think getting a conversation going and then saying, well, what is it about an African-American man in 2010 in Macon, Georgia, facing rape charges when the accuser's a white woman? Do you think by talking about race that that's legitimate in a defense, or is that playing a race card? What do you think, ma'am? Do you think there are people in the community who might, or do you believe there are some people in the community who might believe that that's just a defense tactic and it could never be based on facts? What do you think about that?
Do I think that there are people in the community who think that?
Yeah, what do you think about that thought that those people in the community will have? And what I'm doing is validating. I'm not calling them some racist nut jobs, because I don't care if they're racist or not for James. I just need to know, can they be open to, acquitting for James?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I...
All right, well, no, I've made my point. I'm moving on. But I think we want to stick with it and push ahead. And I think one of the things that's so tough about a theory of the case driven voir dire is it's not always beautiful. It's sometimes a little clumsy. And sometimes we get answers that we weren't expecting. when you control everything and when you only ask for garbage in and garbage out, we can control everything and we can have it nice tied up and we never get challenged with any oddball stuff. When we do theme-driven and we give up control, we can get wigginess, especially on issues. I mean, we touched a little bit on race. We haven't pushed far enough with this room to make it too real and meaningful. But going in there, man, I think if you do it right, you could have a whole knockdown drag out of the panel. It could be a blast. I don't know that we could steer that necessarily toward acquittal. And what we're not trying to do is overly control it. What we're trying to do when we get answers is understanding what our theme is and sort of herding it along to see, is this person going to be open for us or not open for us? That's all we need to know so I can know how to burn my strings. So, I got to go with this one. We aren't going to be talking about fishing unless fishing's an issue in the case. We're not going to be talking about moon pies versus scooter pies and what's your preference. Not RC versus Coke. Not peanuts versus almonds. We're going to talk about real things that relate to the case. Okay? And we're going to think about tonight some can openers. And by can openers, all I'm talking about are what are the real issues in our case and what kind of question can go toward that to get that conversation started. That's it. What can I put in there if I'm trying to figure out a question that kind of goes to the middle of Mount Everest so I can figure out which side the person starts falling? What do I need to get? So on race, we start with that. Another with James Brown, or what are the other issues? What are the themes in James Brown? Slow mental capacity. So how does that factor in? I mean, how does it work for... So James has a low IQ. By the way, I'll tell you, I was reading the paper this weekend and there was a woman who wrote to Dear Abby, or her sister, whichever one of those old curmudgeonly ladies it was. And they said, look, I'm very upset with my husband. We've been married for 13 years and he's on at least his 15th job. He has this 80 IQ and I'm about to receive my doctoral degree. Most of my colleagues in the doctoral program have sort of high-functioning husbands. Now, my husband loves me, we're pretty happy, but, you know, it turns out I'm sort of wondering, will the guy ever be a provider? He's 50 years old. I'm like, no. Yeah, maybe I should be Dear Abby when she kicks. You know, I'm like, of course he's never going to be a provider. The guy, he's like borderline mentally retarded, it sounds like. He's able to hold down a low-functioning job for about 9 months before he gets shit-canned. I mean, when's that going to change? And when's he going to wake up and have a better IQ? It's not going to happen. But I was sitting there wondering, like, how is this person with the doctorate get hooked up with the dude with the 80 IQ? I mean, am I the only one who thinks that's bizarre? Now, I've not IQ tested myself in quite a while, and after a week at the cave, it will drop a few points, I can guarantee you. But I've certainly never gone to IQ test my spouse. But you do sort of like talk about common events and all. I mean, maybe the sex was so awesome that the IQ issue didn't come into play for a while. I don't know. But it is interesting. We've got James with a low IQ. And does that matter in and of itself, or does it just matter as it relates to our little alleged victim gal?
Totally matter.
Okay, tell me.
Well, I mean, you could have people sitting on your jury that have someone in their family that has some kind of mental illness, or people they know, or have employed people, or not been employed themselves because they themselves were questioned about their ability. So it totally matters, and you want to be able to, probably in some kind of gingerly way, solicit that kind of conversation with, similar to the race thing. I mean, what is your opinion, or what are your thoughts, or...
But here's my, thank you for sharing that. See, a little voir dire thing. Thank you very much for sharing that. That's really helpful to me. And it is helpful because does it matter if our theme of the case is Well, she sort of froze and never actually said no, and poor dumb James didn't get it, and so he just kept on going, versus, you know, he kind of won her over with his charm and charisma and little pithy poems that he was reciting in her ear to woo her into the old bed.
I mean, it matters depending upon what your position is going
Yeah.
to be. Because if you're going, I mean, if you're going to make him that first James, then yes, it makes a difference what their opinions are. But if you're going to make him a stronger functioning type of individual, then it does matter, but not in that same way.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I was gonna say, it also matters whether or not we think we're gonna be putting him on the stand. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know how much his mental capacity affects how he would testify, but if we,
Oh, smart group.
if our theory is gonna involve putting him on the stand, then we may wanna know how the jury's gonna react to that.
Absolutely. And if the ADIQ comes up at all, some jurors might think, well, look, of all the people in the world for her to be having consensual sex with, why would she be picking the dumb guy? You know, the slow guy. And I'll tell you, have you guys, I'll do a bit of self-disclosure. I had a client who turned out he was the smartest client I've ever had. He was the only one who didn't give me shit. For 7 years as a public defender. I would go in and meet with him. I gave him the discovery. I'd go meet with him at the jail. He was always so happy to see me. He had very serious charges. And I'd go see him, and he had big glasses on, and he pulled the discovery out, and he asked me a question about the discovery, and his glasses on, off. Never argued, never questioned me, always was sort of happy to see me. Wonderful. We ended up getting his records not too long before trial. The guy had a 71 IQ. Right in MR land. And what I learned was, holy smokes, this masking behavior is lovely. I mean, people who are slow functioning, and you know, and that's what one of the things in the capital work that we run into is people will believe someone's MR if they're wearing a helmet and drooling and are Down syndrome and falling over. They don't believe it for anyone else who has wits enough to kill people. Allegedly. What we know about people who are in that borderline range is they do a heck of a lot of stuff to act like they're not low functioning. So they don't argue with you. They listen, something we can't do worth shit. They listen, eye contact, nod a lot, and they agree. You're like the smartest person they've ever met. We love these people. And it's really interesting, and James very well could be that guy. He could have been the person who really listened to the 17-year-old and thought she was really smart, and might be the only person who's ever listened to her. So we got to know how we have to understand what that theme means in our case before we can start understanding what weird answers mean from jurors. Yeah?
I was just going to say, you know, we learned this morning also that some of your facts you just don't want to avoid, and sensitive issues like that, you don't want it coming out of your adversary's mouth.
Right.
Before it comes out of your mouth with something like mental illness, because then the juror's going to look at you, the defense lawyer, and come up with all those horrible things they think
Right.
about us to begin with. They're just going to think that we're trying to pull the wool over them.
You're right, and you're absolutely right, and that's all good stuff. Uh-oh, I moved the little thing. Oh, this is terrible. Help.
Chris, on Friday, I'm teaching about how to do PowerPoint.
Do you guys understand that she set my computer up? Y'all saw that, right? And she sabotaged me so she could get a big turnout for her PowerPoint workshop. Isn't that like the dirtiest thing you've ever seen? We need to, yeah, see, it's a problem. Oh. How do we get people to open up? Who's this guy?
David R. Jessup.
How do we walk into the courtroom? We walk in with our nicest suit. We have a new silk pocket hanky that's very elitist and off-putting. We don't wear it in other places because they cost a lot of money to get cleaned at the dry cleaner. We'll wear it for trial day. So we come in and we get our pad, and then we start asking questions. And what happens? Sir, what happens there, sir? Sir, will you please tell me significant shit about your life? We shut people down. And we're like him. We become the guy, the tough guy. Do you think he wants people coming to him going, you know, I was on the line last night. You get me? Colonel, I was a little frightened. You think that conversation's happening? No! People won't talk to that guy. They're scared to death of that guy. We can't handle the truth guy. No! We won't talk to that guy. Ooh. We might talk to Eli's dad. Yeah. Eli's been to church once his whole little blessed 10 months. And that's why he's got the silly little bunny on his outfit, Easter Sunday, with all the other people who don't go to church. And I'm not just Eli's dad, I'm also the father of 2 French bulldogs. Beautiful little snorters. And I'm also a criminal defense lawyer who cares seriously about James and about our case. And I'm all those things. And what I'm not is some trickster, lawyer, huckster who's going to put words into your mouth and shut you down. And what I am is somebody you can sort of trust, talk to. You know, every case isn't right for every juror, and we just need to find out if this case might be okay for you guys. So let's talk. Some real stuff. Whoa, table. The other thing, because we don't have our communication guy here, one of the hardest things we have as lawyers, or the hardest skill I've had, other than controlling movement, which Dr. Sunwolf put the fear of God in me on that too. One of the hardest things we have is eye contact. Oh, it's hard. I hope in your rooms this week that you guys will work a little on eye contact. And usually when we're thinking about eye contact, this is what we do. I got 12 in the box. I'm going to do eye contact now. I got a note for eye contact. Yeah, I did my eye contact. We've got to really slow down, and when we're talking to a juror and they're kind enough to share with us their feelings about the race card, and anybody can play them, white people play them, black people play them, God knows the Puerto Ricans play them over there. Yeah, Vivian, you're not off the hook with that. You know, we want to hold her eyes and thank her. We don't need to worry about the next question yet. We'll have plenty of time for that. When she's talking, the judge is never shutting down voir dire. It's only when we talk that we get shut down. So ma'am, thank you. I'm with you. And then when she talks and she stops, what do? Well, first we never interrupt. And when you do interrupt because you can't help yourself because you're so controlling, what do?
Apologize.
Ma'am, I am so sorry. I was raised better. And I mean, this is so important, and it's so important for us to hear what you say. I thought you were done. I apologize. Please finish. It's really important. My bad. And we listen, and we mean it. Because it turns out, we're Eli's dad. We're not Jack Nicholson. We really want people to share with Eli's dad. How about that, Terry? And we want to hold the eye contact, and we want to listen, and we want to talk about real things. One thing we have to do is not just be the lawyer dude. We've got to be better. We've got to come in with our best selves. Once in a while we feel like just on fire and passion for our work. And once in a blue moon, we remember why we so loved our job when we got it. And it's not because we have 100 calls that we haven't returned and people are bitching at us, but it's the honor that we have to spend our life making small amounts of money, not much, but enough to live on, and to do something that can protect the liberty of our clients, and to do something that, boy, on our best days, can change their lives and their families' lives. And they pay us to do that, and we get to fuck up cops in the process? Are you kidding me? Does it get any better than that? No! We want to bring that sort of centeredness to the courtroom. And maybe we want to take a few minutes and to breathe and kind of like find our spiritual place and approach it. And I think with that, we're not going to be perfect, but we can go farther and do more than we've done before in our voir dire. when we, oh, that's going to be tough to read. Well, we'll just skip that. That's not that funny. We're going to talk for a second about peeling the onion, and we're going to be, well, and then we'll skip the cause challenge stuff and work on that in our groups tomorrow, because I think we're getting a little late. One of the things we're terrible about doing, and boy, we've trained hundreds of lawyers in capital voir dire where it's really intensive. And let me tell you, we lawyers are just winded. We're long-winded and we don't say much. At the same time, like my grandmother, she's senile. And she just goes on and on and on and babbles. Let me tell you, I stop more lawyers. And I say, whew, because I steal everything from Dr. Sunwolf, what she did to me. I said, hey, how about this? How about just asking why? Okay, I heard your last answer, and I heard you to say that there might be some reason that you could do something, and all this, and shit like this, and fair and impartial, and she's like, why? What? So why? And when we just do like a good little journalist, and a juror starts giving us some information, or a lot of people play the race card, and yeah, I've heard that, and it's a concern to me. Really? Who? When? Tell me more. That's really important. Share more. Terry's going to talk to us about how far you can go getting people to give you answers you want when you nod your head like a little bobble doll. And it's the most powerful thing in the world in cross-examination. It's also powerful in voir dire. When the juror's talking to you and you lean in and they're talking and you're holding their eyes, nodding and doing this, they keep talking. And you know what happens? You know what happens? Crazy shit comes out. And when crazy shit comes out, we know on what side of Everest they're on. And we know what to do with that juror. And I'm going to give you one example of that. 1995, Group D, The Wolf. And there I am, my first voir dire ever, and this little old man from Macon comes in as a juror. And I'm voir direing him, and I had the Kitchens case. Vonnie Kitchens. Boy, sweet little Vonnie, innocent as can be, and her life was entrusted into my hands, and I'm asking, there's this juror, and I said, sir, I'd like to talk to you about self-defense. You understand that's a legal principle. Could you follow the law, and if there's evidence to support a self-defense, you don't have a problem with that, right, sir? So, shitty question, no answer. Okay, Dr. Solwolf, I'm done here. I think my time's up. No, ask more questions. I'd like to move now to the presumption of innocence. No, go back to that point. All right, Adams, you're worthless. Sit down. Solwolf got up, and, I mean, this happened. I mean, it literally happened in about 45 seconds. She said, sir, it seemed to me that you had a hard time talking about self-defense. Pause. Silence. She's making eye contact. He wasn't afraid of the wolf. I was afraid of the wolf. He wasn't afraid of the wolf. She was listening to him and waiting and being very respectful. Did I read that right, that something more is going on here? It's important that you share that if you can. It's like a 75-year-old guy. I've never talked about this with anyone. I've been married for 47 years, and I've never shared this with my wife or with my children. I was in the Korean War. I served my country. The things that we did there, there's not a day gone by. And he's weeping. He said, please excuse me, I don't cry. I've not cried since Korea. And he's weeping in our little room in Group D. And he said, I can't believe I'm talking to you about this, but there can never be a reason to take another human life. Wolf power, honestly, all joking aside, wolf power moved me to no end. And this juror gave it up without any fight because she was asking about something real. There was some sort of weird thing he couldn't answer. And so what did I do? I ran from it because I didn't know what was coming. What did she do? She ran to it, not knowing what was coming, and said, "Can you tell me more?" That was it. Who, what, when, where, why. Tell me more. It's important. And he told this beautiful story. Now, it turns out he was on the terrible side of Mount Everest. Isn't that nice to know before he's the foreperson of my jury? I would not have wanted Vonnie to have him on her jury. Or Vonnie would be doing a lot of time in the Department of Corrections. I'd rather be celebrating Vonnie's acquittal with you tonight in the cave. And we're going to do lockdown for cause. And I promised Daryl I'd talk about it in the lecture. So, boy, the tape is running out. We're over time. We're going to work hard on locking down for cause. Let me tell you very briefly, very, very briefly, how that would go with our gentleman from Korea. Sir, that's so important that you shared that. Thank you. There's no reason at all to take another human life. Correct? Correct. And that's your belief, and that's your belief. Not just on some theory, but that's your belief based on your walk of life and your personal life experience. Yeah. And that's something held deeply, deeply in your heart. Yeah. And if the judge tells you there are some legal reasons that somebody may be able to take a human life, you're not going to be able to follow that instruction. Not after everything you did for this country. And not based on your personal walk in life and your personal experience, right? Right. So if somebody puts up a self-defense case, you really can't even hear it based on what happened to you in Korea and all the thought you've put into that in the 43 years since. Correct? That's right, Dr. Sunwolf. Thank you. And that was it. He's locked down for cause. He could never serve. He's a beautiful man. We love him. He was terrible for that case. But it's easy to not be judgmental of just truck the Republicans out because that guy was good enough to share himself with us. If he turned out to be a good juror for us, we have a real relationship with him later that we can tap into in closing argument, which is another huge strength when we get to someplace real with our jurors. Thank you guys so much. Have fun.